The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive dome under the artificial sky of Station Prime. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the floating seats that moved slowly around the central speaking platform. The air buzzed with the sound of hundreds of different languages being translated. Through universal communicators. Ambassador Zekthar stepped onto the speaking platform. His forearms spread wide as he looked up at the council members floating above him. The hegemony representative was tall and thin, with gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. His black eyes scanned the crowd as he waited for silence. "Fellow council members," Zekthar began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's sound system. "Today I bring news of great importance to our mighty hegemony." Several council members shifted in their seats. The hegemony had been busy lately, expanding their territory across 3 star systems in the past year. Their war machine was strong and their technology was advanced. Most species preferred to stay out of their way. "We have decided to claim the planet Earth as our newest tributary world," Zekthar announced proudly. For a moment the hall was silent. Then a strange sound began to fill the air. It started as a quiet chuckle from somewhere in the upper seats. Then another being joined in. Within seconds, the entire hall was filled with laughter. Zekthar's face darkened as he watched thousands of galactic representatives laughing at his announcement. His 4 hands clenched into fists at his sides. Council Elder Vorthak, a large being with purple skin and tentacles instead of arms, floated his chair down closer to the platform. His deep voice boomed through the hall as he tried to control his laughter. "My dear Zekthar," Vorthak said, wiping tears from his large yellow eyes. "Surely you jest. Earth? That tiny blue world on the edge of the galaxy? The one with the primitive humans?" The laughter grew louder. Ambassador Kilafron. The Crystal Federation made a sound like breaking glass, which was how her species laughed. "The humans still use chemical rockets to leave their planet," she called out. "They burn fuel like cavemen burn wood. Their weapons shoot small metal pieces," added Counselor Bricks from the Machine Collective. His mechanical voice was set to what humans might recognize as an amused tone. "They call them bullets. How charming." Zekthar raised his voice over the laughter. "These humans may seem primitive, but they control an entire planet, a world with vast resources and—" "Resources?" interrupted Elder Vorthak. "My dear friend, they cannot even agree on how to share those resources among themselves. They fight each other constantly over lines drawn on maps. They have hundreds of different governments on one small world." More laughter filled the hall. Ambassador Quinn from the Ethereal Collective floated in her energy form, her light pulsing in patterns that showed her amusement. "I have studied their broadcasts," she said in her musical voice. "They still debate whether their planet is getting warmer. They cannot agree on basic facts about their own world and their space program," called out Representative Mock from the Trader Guilds. "They have been to their own moon only a few times. Their space stations are held together with metal bolts and hope." The laughter continued. Zekthar felt his pride burning inside his chest. The hegemony was the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy. They had conquered entire star systems. Their technology was centuries ahead of most species. Yet these council members were laughing at their choice of target. "You underestimate them," Zekthar said, his voice getting louder. "The humans have survived on their world for thousands of years. They have built great cities and—" "Great cities?" Vorthak's tentacles waved in amusement. "Cities that would be destroyed by a single plasma bolt from one of your smaller ships. Their tallest buildings are made of metal and glass. Their vehicles still touch the ground as they move." Ambassador Kess from the Hive World spoke up. Her insect-like body clicked as she talked. "Our scouts have observed their military exercises. They march in lines across open ground. They use vehicles that move on wheels. Wheels like ancient toys. Their flying machines need air to work," added Counselor Yenth from the Cloud Riders. "Take them above their atmosphere and they fall like rocks. They have no understanding of real space combat." Zekthar's face was now dark with anger. Regardless of their current technology level, they occupy a strategic position in strategic position? Elder Vorthak's laughter boomed through the hall. My friend, Earth is so far from any important trade routes that most species forget it exists. It sits alone in empty space, ignored by civilized beings for good reason. The humans are not even a unified species, called out Ambassador Keela. They speak hundreds of different languages. They worship different gods. They cannot agree on anything. How could they possibly mount any kind of defense against a real military force? Representative Mock floated his chair closer to the platform. I have traded with human merchants, he said. Nice enough beings, but simple. They get excited over basic technology that we have used for thousands of years. They think faster than light communication is magical. They only recently figured out how to send messages across their galaxy, added Counselor Brix. We have been listening to their radio signals for decades. They broadcast everything into space with no encryption, no security. They tell everyone exactly where they are and what they are doing. Ambassador Quinn's light pulsed thoughtfully. I've observed their entertainment broadcasts. They tell stories about alien invasions where the humans always win through luck or friendship. They have no real understanding of galactic warfare. The laughter in the hall began to settle into amused murmuring. Zekthar stood silently on the platform, his pride wounded but his determination unchanged. Elder Vorthag floated his chair even closer to the platform. His voice became more serious, though amusement still colored his words. Zekthar, my friend, we understand that the hegemony needs to continue expanding to maintain its power. But surely there are better targets than Earth. The Keth worlds are rich in minerals. The borderland systems have established trade networks. Earth has nothing but a single species that has barely left its own planet, added Ambassador Keela. What glory is there in conquering beings who fight with metal tubes and chemical explosives? Zekthar straightened his shoulders. The hegemony has made its decision. We will claim Earth within the next month. Our fleet is already preparing to depart. More chuckles rippled through the hall. Counselor Yenth spoke up from his floating position. How many ships are you sending to conquer this mighty Earth? A full battle fleet, Zekthar replied proudly. 15 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and 200 support vessels. The hall erupted in fresh laughter. Elder Vorthak's tentacles waved so hard with amusement that his chair bobbed in the air. A full battle fleet? To conquer one primitive world? My dear Zekthar, that is like using a plasma cannon to hunt insects. You could conquer Earth with a single cruiser, called out Representative Mock. Maybe just a transport ship with a few soldiers. Why not send a trade vessel? SUGGST de Ambassador Kess. Offer them some shiny beads and they will probably surrender willingly. Zekthar's voice rose above the laughter. The hegemony does not take chances. We will overwhelm them completely. There will be no possibility of resistance. Resistance? Vorthak wiped tears from his eyes again. What resistance? They have no orbital defenses, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. What are they going to do? Throw rocks at your ships? Ambassador Quinn's light pulsed in a pattern that suggested deep thought. Actually, this could be quite entertaining, she said. The humans are creative with their stories. It might be amusing to watch how they react to a real invasion. Several council members made sounds of agreement. Counselor Brix's mechanical voice buzzed with interest. We could broadcast the invasion across the galactic networks. It would be educational for younger species to see how efficiently the hegemony operates. An excellent idea. Elder Vorthak's tentacles clapped together. We can make it a learning experience. Show the galaxy how quickly advanced technology can overwhelm primitive resistance. Representative Mock nodded enthusiastically. The betting pools would be very popular. Though I suppose the only real question is whether the humans surrender in the first hour or the first day. I give them 6 hours, said Ambassador Keela. Once they see the size of your fleet, they will realize. Resistance is pointless. 4 hours, countered Counselor Yenth. Humans are not stupid, just primitive. They will see reason quickly. Zekthar found his anger being replaced by a different feeling. The council was no longer laughing at the hegemony's choice of target. They were now treating it as entertainment. That was not exactly respectful, but it was better than mockery. Elder Vorthic's voice became more formal as he addressed the hall. Very well. The Galactic Council recognizes the hegemony's claim on Earth. We will monitor the situation and broadcast selected portions for educational purposes. He turned back to Zekthar. I assume you will follow standard invasion protocols? Orbital. Bombardment of military targets, followed by ground forces to secure major population centers? Of course, Zekthar replied. We are not barbarians. Civilian casualties will be minimized. The humans will be given chances to surrender before each phase of the operation. How very civilized of you, Vorthak said with amusement still in his voice. I am sure the humans will appreciate your consideration. Ambassador Quinn floated closer to the platform. Will you be taking prisoners for study? Human biology and psychology could be interesting to research. Some specimens will be preserved for scientific purposes, Zekthar confirmed. The rest will be relocated to work colonies where they can contribute to the hegemony's prosperity. Councillor Brix made a mechanical sound that might have been approval. Efficient. You will have the entire operation completed before any other species could even travel to Earth to observe. The distance works in our favor, agreed Representative Mock. By the time word spreads across the galaxy, Earth will already be a hegemony world. Elder Vorthik straightened in his floating chair. Then it is settled. The Galactic Council wishes the hegemony's success in their educational demonstration on Earth. May it serve as a lesson to other primitive worlds about the benefits of joining galactic civilization peacefully. The council members began to float away from the platform, their conversations turning to other matters. Many were already making plans to watch the invasion broadcasts. Some were organizing viewing parties. A few were even setting up betting pools on various aspects of the conquest. Zekthar remained on the platform as the hall slowly emptied. His pride was somewhat restored, but something still bothered him. The casual dismissal of Earth's defensive capabilities felt too easy. The hegemony had not become a galactic power by underestimating their enemies. But then again, what threat could one primitive world possibly pose to a fleet that had conquered star systems? The humans had no allies, no advanced technology, no understanding of space warfare. The conquest would indeed be educational, though perhaps not in the way the council expected. As Zekthar finally left the platform, he was already thinking about the victory celebration that would follow Earth's surrender. The hegemony would gain a new world, new resources, and new respect from the galactic community. What could possibly go wrong with such a simple operation against such a helpless target? In a few weeks, Earth would be just another conquered world in the hegemony's growing empire. The humans would learn to accept their place in the galactic order, just like every other species before them. The laughter still echoed in Zekthar's memory as he left the council chambers. Soon, he thought, the galaxy would see just how efficiently the hegemony could operate. The conquest of Earth would be over so quickly that most beings would miss it if they were not paying attention. After all, what challenge could a species of primitive humans possibly present to the most advanced military force in this sector of the galaxy? 3 weeks after the council meeting, Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Through the massive viewing screen, he could see the blue and green world called Earth spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Behind him, his invasion fleet stretched out across space like a metal cloud. 15 dreadnoughts, each one larger than most species' entire space stations. 40 cruisers bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's surface. 200 support ships carrying troops, supplies, and everything needed to conquer a world. Korath was a veteran of 12 planetary invasions. He had conquered 3 star systems for the hegemony. His gray skin bore the ritual scars of victory, and his forearms had personally planted hegemony flags on dozens of worlds. This should be the easiest conquest of his career. Communication. Officer Vex, Korath called out. Open a channel to the human homeworld. Standard invasion protocol. Yes, Admiral. Vex's tentacles danced over his control panel. Channel open, sir. Korath straightened his uniform and faced the communication screen. In moments, a face appeared on the screen. It was a human female with dark skin and short black hair. She wore some kind of blue uniform with strange markings on it. Behind her, Korath could see what looked like a primitive command center with screens and flashing lights. "This is Admiral Korath of the Hegemony Third Fleet," he announced in his most commanding voice. "I speak for the Galactic Council and the power of civilized space. Your world has been chosen to join the Hegemony as a tributary planet. You will surrender all military forces immediately and prepare for occupation. Compliance will ensure the safety of your population?" The human woman looked at him calmly. Her expression did not show the fear or panic that Korath expected. "This is General Patricia Hayes, United Earth Defense Command," she replied. "We received your message." Korath waited for her to continue, to ask for terms or beg for mercy. Instead, she just looked at him with steady eyes. "Well?" Korath said after a long moment. "Do you surrender?" General Hayes was quiet for several seconds. Then she spoke in a voice that was completely calm. "We'll give you one chance to leave." The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent. Korath's communication staff looked at each other in confusion. His tactical officers stopped their work to stare at the screen. Korath felt his jaw drop open. In all his years of conquest, no primitive species had ever responded to surrender demands with a threat. They begged, they cried, they offered tribute, or they simply accepted defeat. They did not tell a hegemony admiral to leave. "I do not think you understand," Korath said slowly. "Look at your screens. Look at the size of my fleet. You have no orbital defenses. Your weapons cannot reach us. Your entire planet is at my mercy," General Hayes nodded. "We can see your ships. Very impressive. Big, bright, and easy to target." "Easy to target?" Korath's voice rose. "With what? Your primitive missiles? Your chemical rockets? That's for us to know," Hayes replied. "But I'm telling you now, Admiral. This is your only warning. Take your fleet and leave. Don't come back." Korath's four hands clenched into fists. "You dare threaten the hegemony? I have weapons that can destroy your cities from orbit. I have soldiers that have conquered star systems. I have technology your species cannot even understand." "Maybe," Hayes said, "but you have one thing working against you." "And what is that?" General Hayes smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "You picked the wrong planet." The communication ended. The screen went dark, leaving Korath staring at his own reflection. "Sir?" Communication Officer Vex's voice was uncertain. "Should I re-establish contact?" "No," Korath said after a moment. "They have made their choice. Begin orbital bombardment of military targets. Standard pattern. We will show them what defiance costs." "Yes, Admiral." Targeting military installations now. Korath watched as his weapons officers worked their controls. On the tactical display, red targeting markers appeared over Earth's surface. Military bases, radar stations, missile silos, naval ports, all would be destroyed in the first wave. "Firing solution ready, Admiral." "Fire!" The space around Earth lit up as energy beams and plasma bolts shot down from the hegemony fleet. Korath watched with satisfaction as the weapons struck their targets. Explosions bloomed on the planet's surface like deadly flowers, but something was wrong. "Sir," called out Sensor Officer Krim, "I'm reading unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface." "What kind of signatures?" "Unknown, sir. They appear to be some form of defensive screens, but the configuration doesn't match any known technology." Korath frowned. "Defensive screens? Impossible. Our intelligence reports show no such capability." "Nevertheless, sir, several of our targeting systems are being interfered with. Some of our shots are missing their intended targets." "How can primitive humans interfere with hegemony targeting systems?" "Unknown, sir. The interference appears to be coming from multiple locations across the planet." Korath stared at the tactical display. Red error messages were appearing next to several target markers. His weapons officers were working frantically at their controls. "Sir," Sensor Officer Krim called out again. "We're detecting multiple objects launching from the planet's surface. They're primitive missiles. Pathetic. How many?" "Counting, sir. 100, 200, 500. Krim's voice became uncertain. "Sir, I'm now reading over 2,000 objects leaving Earth's atmosphere." 2,000 missiles? Korath felt a cold feeling in his stomach. That's impossible. Our intelligence said they had only limited nuclear capability. "These don't appear to be following normal missile trajectories, sir. They're moving in patterns I don't recognize." On the main viewing screen, Korath could see small lights rising from Earth's surface. They moved like a swarm of angry insects, weaving through space in ways that made no sense for guided missiles. "Time to impact?" "Unknown, sir. Their flight paths keep changing. Some appear to be targeting our forward ships, but others are taking indirect routes that don't make tactical sense." "Defensive fire. Destroy them all." The hegemony fleet's defensive weapons opened fire. Streams of energy and explosive shells filled the space between Earth and the invasion fleet. But the human missiles moved like living things, dodging and weaving through the defensive fire. Some were destroyed, but most kept coming. "Sir," Weapons Officer Tal called out. Several of the incoming objects just split apart. Each one became 3 smaller objects. "Cluster warheads, standard defensive measure. Our shields will handle them." But as Korath watched, something impossible happened. The first human weapons reached his outer ships, but instead of exploding on contact with the energy shields, they passed right through. "Shield penetration," Tal shouted. "How are they getting through our defensive screens?" Explosions began flowering across the hulls of hegemony ships. Not the massive explosions Korath expected from nuclear weapons, but smaller, more precise. Blasts that seemed to target specific systems. "Damage reports. Multiple ships reporting systems failures, sir. The human weapons appear to be designed to disable rather than destroy." "Disable?" Korath could not believe what he was hearing. "You mean they're not trying to kill us?" "No, sir. They're targeting communications, sensors, and weapon systems. It's like they want to blind us, not destroy us." Korath felt his confidence shaking. This was not how primitive species were supposed to fight. They were supposed to throw everything they had at the invasion fleet and hope for the best. They were not supposed to use precision weapons designed to disable advanced technology. "Sir," Sensor Officer Krim called out. "I'm detecting additional launches from Earth. These appear to be larger objects. More missiles?" "Negative, sir. These appear to be spacecraft." Korath's blood went cold. "Spacecraft? Impossible. Humans don't have space warships." "Sir, I'm reading multiple contacts. They appear to be moving under their own power, but their design doesn't match any known human technology." On the viewing screen, new objects were rising from Earth, but these were not the small, bright points of the missiles. These were larger, darker shapes that moved with purpose through space. "Analysis! Unknown design, sir." "They appear to be using some form of propulsion we don't recognize." "No chemical rockets, no plasma drives. They're just ... moving." "How many?" 50 contacts and rising, sir. Wait, 100, 200. Krim's voice became strained. "Sir, I'm now reading over 500 spacecraft launching from various points on Earth's surface." 500 warships? That's impossible. But as Korath watched, the human spacecraft moved into formation around Earth with a precision that spoke of long practice. They were not flying like desperate defenders making a last stand. They were moving like a fleet that knew exactly what it was doing. "Sir," Communication Officer Vex called out. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through." General Hayes appeared on the screen again. Behind her, Korath could see increased activity in what he now realized might not be as primitive a command center as he had thought. "Admiral Korath," Hayes said calmly, "I gave you a chance to leave. You chose not to take it." "Your resistance is brave but futile," Korath replied, though his voice lacked the confidence it had held earlier. You may have surprised us with hidden weapons, but you cannot stand against the full might of the hegemony. Hidden weapons? Hayes looked genuinely puzzled. Admiral, we haven't used any weapons yet. We just launched some defensive satellites and a few patrol ships. Defensive satellites? Those were missiles that penetrated our shields. No, Admiral, those were repair drones. They're designed to fix damaged equipment. We sent them to help you with your targeting problems. Korath felt like the bridge was spinning around him. Help us? You attacked our ships? We disabled your offensive weapons, yes. We can't let you bombard civilian targets. But we haven't actually hurt anyone. Yet. Hayes paused. Would you like us to start? You're bluffing. Those ships of yours are jury-rigged civilian craft with improvised weapons. Hayes smiled that same unfriendly smile from before. Admiral, you really should have done better intelligence gathering before you came here. Our intelligence was thorough. Earth has no space military. No advanced technology, no orbital defenses. You're right about one thing, Hayes said. We don't have orbital defenses. Korath felt a moment of relief. We have something better, Hayes continued. We have a really good memory. What does that mean? It means we remember every alien ship that ever passed through our system. Every deep space probe that scanned our planet. Every time someone has been watching us from the edges of our solar system. Hayes leaned forward on the screen. Did you really think we didn't know about the galactic community? The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was completely silent. Korath felt his mouth go dry. We've been listening to your communications for decades, Admiral. We know about the hegemony. We know about the Galactic Council. We know about every major power in this part of space. Hayes's expression became very serious, and we've been getting ready. Getting ready for what? For the day someone decided Earth looked like easy prey. Hayes stood up. Admiral, this is your last chance. Leave now or we'll show you what humans do to uninvited guests. Korath looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their instruments with expressions of growing concern. His weapons were disabled, his sensors were being jammed. His communication systems were unreliable, and surrounding his mighty invasion fleet was a growing cloud of human spacecraft that his intelligence report said should not exist. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Korath began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Korath stared at the communication screen for a long moment after General Hayes ended the transmission. The bridge of his flagship was quiet except for the soft humming of instruments and the occasional worried murmur from his crew. Sir, Weapons Officer Tal called out hesitantly. What are your orders? Korath turned away from the dark communication screen. His pride as a hegemony admiral burned in his chest. No primitive species had ever spoken to him with such disrespect. No backward planet had ever disabled his weapons and then offered him mercy. The humans thought they were clever, but they had no idea what they were dealing with. Full invasion. Protocol, Korath said firmly. Deploy all ground forces. I want troops on the surface of Earth within the hour. Sir, Sensor Officer Krim spoke up carefully. The human ships are still surrounding us. Shouldn't we deal with them first? 500 small craft against a hegemony battle fleet? Korath waved one of his four hands dismissively. Our shields may be having technical problems, but our armor is still intact. Our ships still outmass theirs 1,000 to 1. Begin landing operations immediately. Yes, Admiral. Korath watched on. His tactical display as transport ships began launching from his fleet. Each transport carried 200 fully armed hegemony soldiers. Their armor could stop any primitive weapon. Their energy rifles could cut through any material the humans might use for cover. Their training was the best in the galaxy. The first wave consisted of 50 transports heading for major population centers across Earth: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing. The humans would see hegemony soldiers landing in their most important cities and would understand that resistance was hopeless. But as the transports approached Earth's atmosphere, something strange began happening. Sir, called out the flight controller. Transport Group Alpha is reporting navigation problems. Their targeting systems are showing multiple false readings. What kind of false readings? They're seeing landing zones that don't exist, sir. Cities that appear to be in the wrong locations. Some are reporting that entire mountain ranges have moved. Korath frowned. Equipment malfunction. Tell them to use visual navigation. Sir, they say they are using visual navigation. But what? They see through their windows doesn't match what their instruments are telling them. That's impossible. On the main viewing screen, Korath could see his transport ships approaching Earth. They should have been moving in neat formation toward their assigned targets. Instead, they seem to be wandering around like lost insects. Sir, the flight controller continued, Transport 7 is requesting permission to abort landing. They say the landing zone they're approaching doesn't match any known terrain features. Abort? Absolutely not. Tell them to land where they can and establish a foothold. Yes, sir. Korath watched with growing frustration as his perfectly planned invasion began to fall apart. Transports were landing in empty fields instead of city centers. Others were circling in confusion over areas that looked nothing like their target zones. A few had simply disappeared from his sensors entirely. Where did Transport 12 go? Korath demanded. Unknown, sir. They reported normal approach, then we lost contact. Lost contact? How do you lose contact with a transport ship? Unknown, sir. Their last transmission was a request for updated landing coordinates. 20 minutes later, the first reports began coming in from the ground forces that had managed to land, sir, Communication Officer Vex announced. Ground Commander Brock is requesting immediate support. Put him through. The face that appeared on the communication screen was scratched and dirty. Commander Brock's usually perfect uniform was torn, and there was a wild look in his eyes. Admiral, Brock said breathlessly, we have a problem, report Commander. Sir? We landed in what our intelligence said was a major human city. Instead, we found ourselves in the middle of some kind of training facility. The humans were waiting for us. Waiting for you? How could they know where you would land? Unknown, sir. But they knew exactly where we were coming down. They had prepared positions, weapons that shouldn't exist, and sir, Brock paused, they fight like nothing we've ever encountered. Explain? They don't fight like civilized beings, sir. They use the terrain against us. They hide in holes in the ground. They attack from directions we can't see. And they use weapons we can't understand. What weapons? Energy rifles. Plasma cannons? No, sir, much worse. They use psychological warfare. Korath felt a chill run down his spine. Psychological warfare? They play sounds that make our soldiers afraid to move. They project images that make us see threats that aren't there. They somehow know exactly what each species in our army fears most. Brock's voice became strained. Sir, half my force is too terrified to leave their landing ship. That's impossible. Hegemony soldiers are trained to resist mental attacks. Sir, with respect, we were trained to resist known forms of mental manipulation. The humans are using techniques we've never seen before. They seem to understand how every species in our force thinks. Before Korath could respond, another communication came in from a different ground commander. Admiral, this is Commander Yex from Landing Zone 7. We have an emergency situation. What now? Sir, the humans have nuclear weapons. But they're not using them the way our intelligence predicted. Explain. They're not launching them at our ships or trying to destroy our landing zones. Instead, they're using them tactically against our ground forces. Small nuclear devices that disable our equipment without causing massive destruction. Korath felt his confidence cracking. Small nuclear devices? That's not possible. Nuclear weapons are massive destructive tools. Sir, these humans appear to have weaponized nuclear technology in ways we didn't think were possible. They have nuclear-powered projectiles, nuclear-enhanced explosives, and nuclear electromagnetic pulse devices. And Sir... Commander Yex paused. They're willing to use them in their own territory. What do you mean? I mean they detonated a nuclear device to stop our advance through one of their cities. They destroyed their own buildings and irradiated their own land just to prevent us from moving forward. Korath stared at the communication screen in shock. No civilized species would use weapons of mass destruction on their own territory. The economic damage alone would take decades to repair. The environmental contamination would make the area unusable for generations. Sir, Commander Yex continued, these humans don't fight like they're trying to win. They fight like they're trying to make sure we can't win either. A third communication came in from another landing zone. Admiral, this is Commander Kess from the northern continent. We need immediate evacuation. Evacuation? You just landed an hour ago. Sir, the humans have turned their entire infrastructure into a weapon against us. Their communication systems are spreading false information to confuse our forces. Their transportation networks are designed to lead us into ambush. Even their civilian buildings are trapped. Trapped how? They have explosive devices hidden throughout their cities. Not to kill us, sir, but to collapse buildings and block our movement. They're turning their own civilization into a maze that only they know how to navigate. Korath felt like the universe was spinning around him. This was not how invasions were supposed to work. Ground forces landed, established control of major population centers, and accepted the surrender of local governments. They did not get lost in psychological warfare, tactical nuclear strikes, and booby-trapped cities. Sir, Sensor Officer Krim called out. We're detecting unusual activity in space around Earth. What kind of activity? The debris field around Earth appears to be moving, sir. Moving? It's space junk. How can space junk move? Unknown, sir. But objects that have been in orbit for decades are changing their positions. Some appear to be forming into larger structures. Korath looked at the main viewing screen. Around Earth, he could see thousands of small objects that he had dismissed as orbital debris. Old satellites, spent rocket stages, pieces of metal that had been floating in space for years. But now they were moving with purpose, connecting to each other like pieces of a giant puzzle. Sir, Krim continued, the objects appear to be using some form of magnetic propulsion. They're assembling into what looks like... What? A defensive grid, sir? The humans are building orbital fortifications out of their own space junk. That's impossible. Those objects have been dead in space for decades. They have no power sources, no propulsion systems. Nevertheless, sir, they are clearly moving under some form of control. And Admiral... Krim's voice became very quiet. I'm detecting weapon signatures from the assembled structures. Korath felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. Weapons? What kind of weapons? Unknown configuration, sir. But the energy readings are significant. At that moment, Communication Officer Vex announced another incoming transmission from Earth. Admiral, General Hayes appeared on the screen again. How is your invasion going? Korath tried to keep his voice steady. Your resistance is more organized than we expected, but you cannot stop the full might of the hegemony forever. Can't. We? Hayes looked genuinely curious. Admiral, let me ask you something. How much do you know about human military history? Your species has a history of primitive conflicts. Wars fought with chemical weapons and metal projectiles. That's true. We do have a lot of experience with war. But I don't think you understand what that means. Enlighten me. Hayes leaned forward on the screen. It means we've spent thousands of years learning how to kill each other efficiently. We've developed weapons, tactics, and strategies for every possible situation. Desert warfare, jungle warfare, mountain warfare, city warfare, psychological warfare, guerrilla warfare, nuclear warfare. She paused. The only thing we've never had to deal with before is space warfare. Then you admit your disadvantage, do I? Hayes smiled. Admiral, did you know that for the past 50 years, human military planners have been developing tactics specifically for fighting technologically superior alien forces? Korath felt his mouth go dry. What? We call it asymmetric warfare. The idea is that a technologically inferior force can defeat a superior enemy by refusing to fight on the enemy's terms. Instead, You use the enemy's advantages against them. That's just theory, is it? Admiral, let me tell you what we've learned about your forces in the past 2 hours. Hayes looked down at something off-screen, then back at Korath. Your soldiers are trained for conventional battlefield scenarios. They expect clear lines of engagement, defined objectives, and logical defensive positions. They're not prepared for an enemy that doesn't follow those rules. She continued, your technology is designed for fighting other advanced civilizations. Your sensors expect to detect energy signatures and metal alloys. Your weapons are calibrated for penetrating advanced armor and energy shields. Your tactics assume your enemy will try to win through superior firepower. Korath found himself listening despite his fear. But humans don't fight that way, Admiral. We fight dirty. We use whatever works. We turn our weaknesses into strengths and your strengths into weaknesses. Hayes' expression became very serious, and we never, ever give up. You're bluffing. Your ground forces cannot stand against trained hegemony soldiers indefinitely. Maybe not. But Admiral, we're not trying to win on the ground. What do you mean? I mean that while your soldiers have been getting lost in our cities and dealing with our traps, we've been studying every piece of technology you brought to our system. Every weapon, every ship, every piece of equipment. Hayes paused, and we've been adapting. As if to emphasize her point, alarms began sounding throughout Korath's flagship. Sir, Sensor Officer Krim called out in panic. The human orbital constructions are targeting our ships. Impossible. Those are just pieces of space junk. Not anymore, sir. They're firing some kind of projectile weapons. Kinetic impactors moving at significant fractions of light speed. On the viewing screen, Korath could see streaks of light shooting from the assembled orbital structures toward his fleet. The projectiles moved too fast to track, but when they hit hegemony ships, the results were devastating. Damage report. Multiple impacts across the fleet, sir. The projectiles are penetrating our armor like it's not there. How is that possible? Unknown, sir. The impacts appear to be purely kinetic. No explosives, no energy discharges. Just incredibly dense objects moving at incredible speeds. General... Hayes was still on the communication screen, watching Korath's panic with calm interest. You see, Admiral, she said quietly, we told you that you picked the wrong planet. Korath looked around his bridge at his terrified crew, then back at the human general who had somehow turned a simple conquest into a nightmare. What do you want? He asked finally. I want you to leave, Hayes replied, right now. Take your ships and go back where you came from. And if I refuse? Hayes' smile returned, cold and unfriendly. Then we'll show you what humans do when we stop playing defense. Across the galaxy, millions of beings sat in front of their viewing screens, watching what was supposed to be an entertaining demonstration of hegemony efficiency. The invasion of Earth had been advertised as an educational program showing how advanced military forces dealt with primitive resistance. Instead, they were watching something that made no sense. On the main broadcast channel, Admiral Korath's mighty invasion fleet hung in space around Earth looking confused and damaged. Ships that should have been invincible were showing blast marks and system failures. Ground forces that should have conquered the planet in hours were calling for help and evacuation. Ambassador Quinn floated in her energy form in the viewing lounge of Station Prime, surrounded by dozens of other Galactic Council members. Her light pulsed in patterns of confusion and disbelief. This cannot be correct, she said to Elder Vorthak, who was watching the broadcast through his large yellow eyes. The transmission must be corrupted. Primitive humans cannot be fighting off a hegemony. Battle fleet. Elder Vorthak's tentacles waved nervously. I thought the same thing, but I've checked the signal multiple times. This is a real-time broadcast from the Earth system. On the screen, they watched as human spacecraft that looked like they had been built in someone's garage flew circles around massive hegemony dreadnoughts. The human ships moved in ways that defied everything the galaxy knew about space combat. They were too fast, too agile, and too coordinated for primitive technology. Representative Mock from the Trader Guilds was calculating odds on his personal computer. This is impossible, he muttered. According to our intelligence reports, humans barely understand the physics of space travel. They should not be able to build ships that can outmaneuver hegemony cruisers. Maybe our intelligence was wrong, suggested Ambassador Tila from the Crystal Federation. But her voice sounded uncertain. Counselor. Brix from the Machine Collective was analyzing the broadcast data with his mechanical precision. The human technology does not match any known design principles, he announced. Their ships appear to be using propulsion systems that violate several basic laws of physics. Laws of physics don't get violated, Elder Vorthek said firmly. There must be an explanation. But as they continued watching, the explanation became more and more difficult to find. The humans were not just resisting the invasion, they were studying it. Every time the hegemony forces tried a new tactic, the humans seemed to learn from it immediately and develop a counter-strategy. Meanwhile, in the interrogation chambers of the hegemony ground forces, something even more disturbing was being discovered. Commander Brock sat across from a captured human soldier in what had once been a secure holding area. The human was a young male with brown hair and steady eyes. He wore a simple green uniform with no rank markings that Commander Brock could recognize. What is your name? Brock asked through his universal translator. Sergeant Mike Chun, United Earth Defense Force, the human replied calmly. How long has your species known about the galactic community? About 80 years, give or take. Brock felt his stomach drop. 80 years? That's impossible. Our first, contact protocols show that Earth was only discovered by galactic survey teams 20 years ago. Sergeant Chun smiled. Your survey teams weren't the first aliens to visit our system. They were just the most obvious. What do you mean? I mean, we've been tracking alien visitors since the 1940s. Every deep space probe, every observation satellite, every scout ship that thought it was being sneaky. Chun leaned back in his chair. We've been watching us for decades. Commander Brock stared at the human soldier. This changed everything. If humans had known about alien technology for 80 years, if they had been preparing for this possibility for generations, double quote how? Brock asked. How did you detect our scout ships? They use advanced stealth technology. Stealth technology that's designed to fool sensors based on galactic standard physics, Chun replied. But humans don't use galactic standard anything. We built our detection systems from scratch, based on our own understanding of how the universe works. That's not possible. Physics is universal. The laws of science are the same everywhere. Chun's smile grew wider. Are they? Commander, let me ask you something. How many different species contributed to what you call galactic standard? Science? Hundreds, the greatest minds from across the galaxy. And how many of those species evolved on worlds similar to Earth? Brock thought for a moment. Very few. Earth's environment is quite unusual. Exactly. So your universal science is really the science of species that evolved in similar conditions. But humans evolve differently. We see the universe differently. We think about problems differently. Chun leaned forward. And we solve problems differently. You're saying human science is different from galactic science? I'm saying human science started from completely different assumptions. When we discovered that aliens existed, we didn't try to copy your technology. We analyzed it, figured out how it worked, and then built our own versions that worked better for us. Commander Brock felt a chill of understanding. You reverse-engineered our technology. Every piece we could get our hands on. Every crashed probe, every piece of debris, every signal transmission. Chun's expression became serious. Did you really think we would just ignore the fact that we weren't alone in the universe? Across the galaxy, similar interrogations were producing the same shocking results. Every captured human soldier told the same story. Humanity had been aware of the galactic community for decades. They had been studying alien technology, learning about alien military tactics, and preparing for the day when someone decided Earth looked like an easy target. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. In another interrogation room, Commander Yex faced a human female who introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Martinez, a military scientist. How many humans know about the galactic community? Yex asked. All of them, Dr. Martinez replied simply. All of them? That's impossible. Your governments would never be able to keep such a massive secret, Dr. Martinez laughed. Secret, Commander? It was never a secret. We've been talking about alien contact openly for over a century. That's ridiculous. Our intelligence monitoring of your broadcast shows constant debate about whether aliens exist. Exactly. We've been hiding the truth in plain sight. Every science fiction movie, every television show, every book about alien invasion has been a training exercise. We've been preparing our entire population for this day. Yex stared at the human scientist. Training exercises? Do you think it's a coincidence that humans tell so many stories about alien invasions? We've been running scenarios, testing strategies, and teaching our population how to think about contact with hostile alien forces for generations. You're saying your entertainment media was actually military preparation? Among other things, yes. Every movie about humans defeating alien invaders was a lesson in asymmetric warfare. Every story about human ingenuity overcoming superior technology was a training manual. Every tale of human courage in the face of impossible odds was building the psychological foundation for exactly this situation. Dr. Martinez stood up and walked to the small window in the interrogation room. Through it, she could see the chaos of the hegemony landing zone, with confused alien soldiers trying to deal with human tactics they didn't understand. Commander, she said quietly, your species has been spacefaring for thousands of years. You've conquered dozens of worlds. You have technology that seems like magic to us. Then why aren't you afraid? Dr. Martinez turned back to face him. Because we've been imagining this exact scenario since before your species knew Earth existed. We've been planning for it, preparing for it, and dreaming about it. This isn't our worst nightmare, Commander. This is Tuesday. The interrogation reports were transmitted back to Admiral Korath's flagship, where they created a panic among the command staff. The realization that humanity had been deliberately preparing for galactic contact changed everything about the invasion. Sir, Intelligence Officer Wren reported to Korath. Based on prisoner interrogations, it appears that human resistance is not improvised. They have been planning for exactly this type of scenario for multiple generations. That's impossible, Korath insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. No species could maintain that level of preparation without galactic support. Sir, the humans appear to have developed their own unique approach to military science. They don't use standard galactic technologies or tactics. Instead, they've created their own systems specifically designed to counter advanced alien forces. Korath looked at the tactical display showing his scattered and confused fleet. Are you telling me that this entire invasion was anticipated? More than anticipated, sir. According to the prisoners, it was eagerly awaited. Many of the human soldiers we captured expressed disappointment that our invasion wasn't more challenging. Disappointment? Yes, sir. They had hoped for a more sophisticated enemy. Apparently, our tactics are considered predictable by human military standards. Admiral Korath felt the universe spinning around him. The species he had dismissed as primitive had been studying the galaxy for decades. They had been preparing for this exact invasion scenario for generations. They had built their entire military doctrine around the assumption that someday someone would come to conquer them, and now they were disappointed that the hegemony wasn't providing enough of a challenge. On his communication screen, Admiral Korath could see the ongoing broadcast to the galactic community. Millions of beings across hundreds of worlds were watching his invasion fail in real time. The hegemony's reputation for military efficiency was being destroyed before the eyes of the entire galaxy. But worse than that, they were learning. Every species watching the broadcast was seeing human tactics, human technology, and human strategies. They were learning that the humans had found ways to counter advanced galactic military doctrine. Sir, Communication Officer Vex called out, we're receiving multiple transmissions from across the galaxy. Military observers, intelligence services, and several planetary defense forces are requesting detailed information about human tactics. They want to learn from this disaster, Korath realized. Yes, sir. If the humans can resist a hegemony invasion, other species want to know how they did it. Korath understood the implications immediately. The humans weren't just fighting off his invasion. They were teaching the entire galaxy how to resist advanced military forces. Every tactic they used, every innovation they displayed, every strategy they employed was being broadcast to species that might someday face their own invasions. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were changing the balance of power in the galaxy forever, and they were doing it while acting disappointed that the challenge wasn't harder. Sir, Sensor Officer Krim called out urgently. We're detecting new activity from Earth, multiple launches from locations across the planet. More defensive satellites? No, sir, these appear to be larger vessels. Much larger. On the main viewing screen, Korath watched as massive structures began rising from Earth's surface. These weren't the small, agile craft that had been harassing his fleet. These were ships that rivaled his own dreadnoughts in size. How many? Korath asked quietly. Counting, sir. 10, 20, 50. Krim's voice became strained. Sir, I'm now reading over 100 capital-class vessels launching from Earth. 100 capital ships? Where were they hiding them? Unknown, sir. They appear to have been constructed underground, in facilities our orbital scans never detected. Admiral Korath watched in growing horror as Earth revealed the true extent of its preparations. The humans hadn't just been planning to resist an invasion. They had been planning to win, and based on the size of the fleet now emerging from Earth's surface, they had been planning to win decisively. Sir, Communication Officer Vex announced. Incoming transmission from Earth. General Hayes appeared on the screen one more time. But now, instead of standing in what Korath had thought was a primitive command center, she was clearly on the bridge of one of the massive human warships. Admiral Korath, she said with a smile that was no longer unfriendly, it was positively predatory. I believe I mentioned that we had been playing defense. Behind her, through the bridge windows, Korath could see the Earth fleet spreading out across space in a formation that spoke of long practice and careful planning. Admiral, Hayes continued, I think it's time we showed you what humans do when we stop playing defense and start playing offense. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so quiet. Elder Vorthek floated in his chair, staring at the main viewing screen with his large yellow eyes wide with disbelief. Around him, hundreds of council members from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence as they watched the impossible unfold before them. On the screen, the human fleet spread across space like a dark cloud of death. Over 100 massive warships, each one bristling with weapons that defied galactic understanding of physics and engineering. These were not the crude, improvised craft they had expected from a primitive species. These were warships that looked like they had been designed by beings who understood warfare better than anyone in the galaxy. This cannot be real, whispered Ambassador Tila, her crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. Those ships are larger than hegemony dreadnoughts. How did humans build such vessels without anyone knowing? Counselor Brix ran calculations through his mechanical brain at maximum speed. Based on the visible size and mass of those vessels, construction would have required industrial capacity exceeding most galactic civilizations. The humans would have needed to dedicate their entire planetary economy to military production for decades. Maybe that's exactly what they did, Elder Vorthek said quietly. His tentacles moved in slow, worried patterns. Maybe we never understood what we were dealing with. Representative Mock was frantically checking trade records on his personal computer. According to our economic monitoring, Earth's economy has been growing steadily for the past 50 years. We assumed it was normal industrial development. But if they were actually building a secret military fleet, then their entire civilization has been one massive military preparation. Finished Ambassador Quinn, her energy form pulsed with patterns of fear and amazement. They turned their whole planet into a weapons factory. On the screen, the human fleet began to move. But instead of attacking immediately, they formed a perfect sphere around Admiral Korath's invasion force. The hegemony ships found themselves completely surrounded, trapped in the center of a formation that spoke of careful planning and flawless execution. In the Galactic Council's Military Analysis Center, experts from dozens of species worked frantically to understand what they were seeing. General Koth of the warrior clan studied the human formation with the eye of a veteran soldier. "Look at their positioning," he said to his staff. "Every human ship is positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire, no matter which direction. The hegemony ships try to move, they will face concentrated firepower from multiple angles." "That's standard encirclement tactics," replied his aide. "Nothing revolutionary there." "Look closer," General Koth insisted. "The humans aren't just surrounding the hegemony fleet. They're positioned so that if the hegemony ships fire their weapons, they will hit each other. The humans have turned the enemy's own firepower into a weapon against them." His aide stared at the tactical display with growing understanding. "They're not just surrounding them. They're forcing them to choose between surrender and mutual destruction." "Exactly. And notice something else. The human ships are all different designs. No two vessels look identical." "What does that mean?" General Koth's expression became grim. "It means they built each ship for a specific purpose. They didn't mass-produce identical vessels like every other military force in the galaxy. They created a custom fleet where every ship fills a unique role in their overall strategy." On the main broadcast screen, Admiral Korath's voice could be heard over the communication channel, though his words were directed at the human fleet rather than the galactic audience. "This is Admiral Korath of the Hegemony Third Fleet," he announced. "You are vastly outnumbered. My fleet consists of over 250 vessels. You cannot possibly defeat us all." General Hayes' voice came back over the communication channel, calm and confident. "Admiral, you're thinking about this wrong. We're not trying to defeat your ships, we're trying to capture them." A collective gasp went through the Galactic Council chambers. Capture a hegemony battle fleet? The very idea was insane. Military fleets were destroyed in battle, not captured. The logistics alone would be impossible. Capture us? Korath's voice carried a note of disbelief. "You cannot capture an entire battle fleet. It's never been done." "It's never been tried by humans," Hayes replied. "Admiral, let me explain something about human military philosophy. We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure the problem never happens again." "What does that mean?" "It means we're going to take your ships, your technology, and your soldiers back to Earth. We're going to study everything you brought here. And then we're going to use that knowledge to make sure no one ever tries to invade our planet again." The implications of this statement sent shockwaves through the galactic audience. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were planning to reverse engineer an entire hegemony battle fleet. They would learn every secret of advanced galactic military technology, but that wasn't the most terrifying part. Admiral Korath seemed to realize the same thing. "You cannot hold a fleet this size prisoner. The logistics are impossible. The cost would bankrupt your entire civilization." "Who said anything about holding you prisoner?" Hayes asked. "Admiral, we're going to give you a choice. You can surrender your fleet and your soldiers will be returned to hegemony space with a message for your government. Or you can fight and we'll take your fleet anyway, but your soldiers won't be going home." The communication channel fell silent. Across the galaxy, military experts tried to understand what they were hearing. The humans were offering to return hegemony soldiers after capturing their entire fleet. It made no sense from any known military perspective. Elder Vorthek spoke into the silence of the council chambers. "They're not interested in conquest. They're interested in sending a message." "What kind of message?" asked Ambassador Keela. "The kind that ensures no one ever tries this again." On the screen, they could see movement among the human fleet. But instead of attacking, the human ships began to demonstrate their capabilities. Energy beams that could slice through hegemony armor like paper. Projectile weapons that move faster than anything in the galactic military arsenal. Defensive systems that seemed to anticipate attacks before they were fired. But the most shocking demonstration came when one of the human ships simply vanished. Where did it go? Counselor Bricks asked, his mechanical sensors unable to track the missing vessel. The answer came when the ship reappeared directly next to a hegemony dreadnought, close enough to touch its hull. Impossible, breathed General Koth. No ship can move that fast without being detected. They're not moving fast, realized Representative Mock. They're moving through space in a way we don't understand. That's not advanced propulsion. That's completely different physics. The human ship that had demonstrated the impossible movement sent a simple message to the hegemony dreadnought it had appeared next to. Your shields are down. Your weapons are offline. You are helpless. Please consider surrender. Admiral Korath's voice came over the communication channel, strained and desperate. How? How are you doing this? General Hayes responded with something that sounded almost like pity in her voice. Admiral, your technology is based on galactic standard science. It's very advanced, very sophisticated, and very predictable. But humans never learned galactic standard science. We developed our own understanding of how the universe works. That's impossible. Physics is universal. Physics is universal. But the application of physics depends on how you think about the universe. And humans think about the universe very differently than anyone else in the galaxy. The human demonstration continued. Ships that could phase through solid matter. Weapons that could disable enemy systems without damaging them. Defensive screens that could redirect enemy fire back at the attackers. Technology that seemed to violate every known law of galactic science. But the most disturbing demonstration was yet to come. Admiral Korath, Hayes said over the communication channel, we're going to show you something that we hope will help you make your decision about surrender. On every screen across the galaxy, a new image appeared. It showed space beyond Earth's solar system. And in that space, moving toward the galactic core, was another fleet of human ships, a much larger fleet. That fleet is heading toward hegemony space, Hess announced calmly. They should arrive at your homeworlds in approximately 6 weeks. The Galactic Council chambers erupted in chaos. Species representatives shouted questions and demands. Military advisors tried to calculate the implications. Trade officials worried about economic disruption. Elder Vorthic's voice boomed over the noise. Order! Order in the chambers! When silence returned, Ambassador Keela spoke for everyone. How many ships are in that fleet? Enough, Hayes replied simply. Admiral Korath, the fleet you brought to invade Earth represents the entire Third Fleet of the hegemony military. The fleet we sent to visit your homeworlds is considerably larger. Visit? Korath's voice was barely a whisper. Visit, Hayes confirmed. They're not going to invade your worlds, Admiral. They're going to deliver a message to your government. And to every government in the galaxy. What message? The message is simple. Earth is under human protection. Any species that threatens our world will discover that humans do not limit their military activities to defensive operations. The implications of this statement were staggering. The humans were not just defending Earth, they were establishing themselves as a galactic military power. They were announcing that they had the capability to project force across interstellar distances. General Koth spoke quietly to his aide in the Military Analysis Center. Do you understand what just happened? No, sir. The humans just announced that they are no longer a primitive species confined to one world. They have become a galactic civilization. And their first act as a galactic civilization was to send a military fleet to the capital worlds of the hegemony. But they said it was just a message. The message is the fleet itself. They're telling the galaxy that humans can reach any world at any time with sufficient force to do whatever they decide needs to be done. On the main screen, Admiral Korath was having what appeared to be a breakdown. His voice, when it came over the communication channel, was that of a defeated being. What do you want? We want you to take a message back to the hegemony government, Hayes replied. Tell them that Earth appreciates their interest in galactic politics, but we prefer to handle our own affairs. That's all? That's all. Oh. And Admiral? Tell them that if they or anyone else decides to visit our system again, they should call first. We're happy to receive peaceful visitors. but uninvited guests will be treated as threats. And if I refuse to deliver this message, then the fleet heading toward hegemony space will deliver it for you. But I think your government would prefer to hear it from one of their own officers rather than from us." Admiral Korath was quiet for a long moment. Then his voice came over the channel, broken and defeated. "I surrender. The Third Fleet surrenders unconditionally. Thank you, Admiral. Your ships will be escorted to a safe distance from Earth, where your soldiers will be transferred to transports for return to hegemony space. Your vessels will remain with us for study." "Study? Of course. We want to understand galactic technology better. Don't worry, we'll take good care of your ships. We might even improve them before we send them back." The communication ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Elder Vorthak floated in his chair, staring at the screen where human ships were efficiently and professionally taking control of the most powerful military fleet in their sector of space. The humans were doing it without violence, without anger, and without apparent effort. "How did this happen?" he asked quietly. Ambassador Quinn's energy form pulsed with patterns of deep thought. "I think we made a fundamental error in our assessment of the human species." "What error?" "We assumed that because they were technologically primitive, they were also intellectually primitive. We thought their isolation meant they were ignorant." Her light flickered. "But isolation can also mean they had time to think, time to develop their own approaches to problems, time to prepare." Representative Mock looked up from his calculations. "According to my analysis, if the humans have been preparing for galactic contact for 80 years, they have had more time to plan their initial strategy than most species have to develop their entire civilizations. And they used that time. Well," added Counselor Brix, "they studied us while we ignored them. They learned our weaknesses while we assumed they had none. They prepared for war while we assumed they were incapable of it." Elder Vorthak's tentacles moved in slow patterns of resignation. "The question now is what this means for the rest of the galaxy." On the screen, the last of the hegemony soldiers were being transferred to transport ships for their journey home. The human fleet maintained perfect formation around the captured vessels, professional and efficient in their victory. General Hayes appeared on the communication channel one final time, addressing not Admiral Korath but the galactic audience she knew was watching. "To the Galactic Council and all species observing these events," she said, looking directly into the camera, "humanity greets you. We are aware that our actions today may seem aggressive or threatening. They are not intended to be." She paused, her expression serious but not unfriendly. "We are a peaceful species. We want to trade with you, learn from you, and contribute to galactic civilization. But we will not be conquered, enslaved, or treated as primitives. We have earned our place in the galaxy through our own efforts, and we intend to keep it. Earth stands ready to join the galactic community as equals. We hope the community is ready to accept us as we are. Humans who have spent generations dreaming of the stars, preparing for the day we would meet you, and determined to make sure that meeting happens on our terms." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to contemplate a new reality. Humanity had announced its presence in the most unmistakable way possible. They were no longer a primitive species on a backwater world. They were humans. And the galaxy would never be the same. Elder Vorthak spoke into the silence of the council chambers. "I believe we need to prepare new protocols for species admission to the Galactic Council." "Why?" asked Ambassador Keela. "Because I have a feeling we're about to receive an application for membership. And somehow, I don't think we're going to be able to reject it." On the screen, the human fleet was already beginning to disperse. Some ships escorting the captured hegemony vessels, others returning to Earth, still others heading out toward the edges of the solar system to resume their vigilant watch over human space. The age of humanity as a galactic power had begun, and it had begun with a simple message that would echo across the stars for generations to come. You picked the wrong planet.
The morning sun cast long shadows across the farming colony of New Terra as Maya Chen skipped between the crop rows. The 8-year-old girl loved helping her father check the automated harvesters. Her dark hair bounced as she ran, and her laughter echoed across the fields where golden wheat swayed in the artificial breeze. "Papa, look, the corn is taller than me now," Maya called out, stretching her arms up toward the green stalks. Engineer David Chen smiled as he watched his daughter play. Life on New Terra was simple but good. The colony had been established only 5 years ago, but the 1,000 families who lived here had built something beautiful. They grew food, raised children, and lived in peace on this distant world at the edge of human space. "Maya, stay close," David called. "The inspection team will be here soon." The Galactic Dominion had sent word that their ships would arrive today, for what they called a compliance check. David did not like the sound of that, but Earth's government had told all colonies to cooperate with their new alien neighbors. The Dominion controlled most of the galaxy, and humanity was still new to interstellar politics. At exactly noon, 3 massive ships appeared in the sky above New Terra. They were dark and angular, casting shadows over the entire colony. The ships landed with a thunderous roar that shook the ground and sent the colonists running to their windows. From the largest ship, a group of tall, gray-skinned aliens emerged. They wore dark uniforms with silver markings and moved with the confidence of those who expected to be obeyed. Leading them was Admiral Zexathara, a being whose cold yellow eyes showed no emotion as he surveyed the human settlement. "Primitives," he muttered to his aide. "Look how they scatter like insects." Colony Administrator Elena Vasquez walked out to meet the aliens. She was a former military officer who had chosen the quiet life of managing a farming world, but her bearing still showed her training. She stood straight and kept her voice steady as she greeted the Dominion forces. "Welcome to New Terra, Admiral. I am Elena Vasquez, the colony administrator. How can we assist you today?" Admiral Zexathara barely looked at her. His translator device made his words sound mechanical and cold. "This world produces food. The Dominion requires tribute. You will provide 70% of your harvest immediately." Elena's jaw tightened. "Admiral, with respect, that amount would leave our people without enough food for the winter. We can offer 30%, as outlined in the initial contact agreements." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. He was not used to being questioned by what he considered lower life forms. The humans were new to the galaxy, barely worth noticing, yet this female dared to negotiate with him. "You misunderstand your position, human. The Dominion does not negotiate with primitive species. You will comply or face consequences." Around the landing area, colonists had begun to gather. They stayed at a distance, but their worried faces showed they understood something was wrong. David Chen had arrived with Maya still holding his hand, both curious about the alien visitors. Elena stood her ground. "Admiral, I cannot authorize the removal of resources that would starve our people. Perhaps we could arrange a different schedule, or discuss alternative compensation." The Admiral's aide whispered something in their alien language. Zexathara nodded slowly, his expression growing darker. "You choose defiance," he said. "Very well. Perhaps an example is needed to teach your species about the consequences of disobedience." Before Elena could respond, the Admiral gestured to his soldiers. They raised weapons that hummed with energy. The colonists began to back away, but the soldiers moved to surround them. "Admiral, please," Elena said, raising her hands. "There's no need for violence. We can work this out." "The time for discussion has passed," Zexathara replied. His yellow eyes scanned the crowd of humans until they settled on Maya Chen. The small girl stood close to her father, her eyes wide with fear, but still curious about the strange visitors. "That one," the Admiral said, pointing directly at Maya. 2 soldiers moved forward. David Chen stepped in front of his daughter, his face pale but determined. "She's just a child. If you want to punish someone, take me instead." The Admiral smiled, showing sharp teeth. "The punishment is not for her, it is for all of you. You will remember this moment and understand the price of defying the Dominion." The soldiers pushed David aside with casual force. He hit the ground hard but immediately tried to get up. More soldiers held him down as Maya was brought forward. The little girl was crying now, calling for her father. "Papa, Papa, help me." Elena stepped forward desperately. "Admiral, I beg you. Take our food, take whatever you want, but please don't hurt an innocent child." "Innocence is a luxury your species can no longer afford," Zexthara replied coldly. The Admiral drew his sidearm, a sleek weapon that glowed with deadly energy. Maya looked up at him with tears streaming down her face, not understanding why these strangers wanted to hurt her. "Please," she whispered. "I want to go home." Those were Maya Chen's last words. The energy blast was quick and clean. The 8-year-old girl fell to the ground and did not move. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the Dominion soldiers seemed surprised by their commander's action. David Chen's scream of anguish echoed across the colony. He broke free from the soldiers holding him and crawled to his daughter's body, gathering her in his arms. His sobs were raw and heartbreaking as he held the child who would never laugh or run through the wheat fields again. Elena Vasquez stared at the scene, her face showing no emotion. But inside, something fundamental had changed. She had seen war, had lost soldiers under her command, but this was different. This was the murder of an innocent child for no reason other than to make a point. Admiral Zexthara holstered his weapon and looked around at the shocked faces of the colonists. "Let this be a lesson," he announced. "The Dominion's patience has limits. You will provide the tribute demanded, or more will die." The aliens began to return to their ships, their business apparently finished. They took nothing with them except the memory of a child's death and the satisfaction of having delivered their message. As the ships lifted off and disappeared into the sky, the colonists slowly gathered around David Chen and his daughter. Some wept openly. Others stood in stunned silence. All of them had been changed by what they had witnessed. Elena knelt beside David and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. David looked up at her with eyes full of pain and rage. "They killed her for nothing," he said. "She was just a little girl who liked to help in the gardens. She never hurt anyone." "I know," Elena replied softly, "and they're going to pay for it." The colony's communication officer approached them carefully. "Administrator, we've received orders from Earth Command. They want a full report on the incident." Elena stood slowly, her expression hardening. "Send them everything. Video records, witness statements, all of it. Make sure they understand exactly what happened here today." As the day wore on, news of Maya Chen's death spread throughout the colony and then beyond. The story traveled from New Terra to the other human settlements, then to Earth itself. Within hours, every human in known space had heard about the 8-year-old girl who died because an alien admiral wanted to teach them a lesson about obedience. The reaction was not what the Galactic Dominion expected. Instead of fear and submission, the humans became quiet. There were no protests, no angry speeches, no demands for justice through diplomatic channels. The response was something far more dangerous: silence. Elena Vasquez stood in her office that night, looking out at the colony where lights burned in every window. The colonists were not sleeping. They were planning, discussing, and making decisions that would echo across the galaxy. She opened a secure communication channel to Earth and began typing her report. But this was not just an official document. This was a declaration of war, written in the simple words that described how a child died for an alien's amusement. Maya Chen was 8 years old, she wrote. She loved helping her father in the fields. She was curious about the universe and kind to everyone she met. Today, Admiral Zexthara of the Galactic Dominion executed her in cold blood to send a message about human obedience. Elena paused, thinking about the little girl who would never grow up, never see another sunrise, never laugh again. "Message received," she continued typing. "Here is our reply." Meanwhile, on his flagship returning to Dominion space, Admiral Zexthara reviewed the day's events with satisfaction. The humans had learned their place in the galactic order. The tribute would be delivered on schedule, and word of what happened on New Terra would spread to other human worlds. There would be no more defiance. His aide approached with a data pad. "Admiral, we're receiving communications from other human colonies. They're all agreeing to increase their tribute payments, without argument." "Excellent," Zexthara replied. "Fear is an effective teacher. The humans now understand the consequences of challenging Dominion authority." What the Admiral did not know was that the increased tribute offerings were not signs of submission. They were part of something much larger, a plan that was already beginning to take shape in human minds across the galaxy. On Earth, in a secure facility beneath the Swiss Alps, General Sarah Kim received Elena's report. She read it twice, then closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her expression was cold and determined. "Activate Protocol Lazarus," she said to her aide. "Full implementation. All assets, all resources, everything we have." "General, are you certain?" Protocol Lazarus was designed as a last resort scenario. "They killed a child," General Kim replied simply. "They killed our child. That makes this exactly the scenario Lazarus was designed for." Across human space, dormant communication networks suddenly came alive. Hidden facilities began activating systems that had been built in secret over the past decade. Scientists, soldiers, and engineers who had been living normal lives received coded messages that changed everything. Dr. James Morrison, Earth's leading expert on alien biology, had been studying Dominion physiology and technology since first contact. Now his research took on a new purpose. He would find every weakness, every vulnerability, every way to hurt the beings who thought they could murder human children without consequences. Captain Elena Vasquez submitted her resignation as colony administrator that night. By morning, she had received new orders that would take her far from New Terra's peaceful farms. She had work to do, and it would not be the kind of work done in the light of day. Maya Chen was buried the next morning in a small grave overlooking the wheat fields she had loved. The entire colony attended the service. No words were spoken about revenge or justice. Those things were already in motion, set into action by forces the Galactic Dominion could not imagine. The little girl's gravestone bore a simple inscription: Maya Chen, beloved daughter. She believed the universe was good. But the universe had shown its true face, and humanity was about to respond, in kind. The war for Maya Chen's memory was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Zexathara had made his fatal mistake. He had shown humans that the universe contained beings who would kill children for political convenience. Now he would learn what happened when a species that loved its young was pushed beyond all limits of tolerance. The age of human innocence was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. 3 days after Maya Chen's death, the Galactic Council gathered on their capital world of Centralis Prime. The massive chamber buzzed with the conversations of dozens of alien species, each representing their portion of the vast dominion. At the center of it all sat High Chancellor Vorthak, an ancient being whose species had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. "The human situation requires discussion," announced Chancellor Vorthak, his voice carrying easily through the chambers. Translation systems. Admiral Zexthara has reported successful compliance enforcement on their outer colonies. Representative Clixtal of the Mining Guild shifted in his seat. His species had been among the first to encounter humans during expansion, and they had found them surprisingly adaptable. "Chancellor, the humans have been unusually quiet since the incident on New Terra. Perhaps we should consider their response." "What response?" Admiral Zexthara stood from his position in the military section. "The humans have increased tribute from all their worlds. They understand their position now. The execution of one child has brought their entire species into line." Several council members nodded approvingly. This was how the galaxy worked. When primitive species joined the Dominion, they often required dramatic lessons to understand their place. The humans were no different from dozens of other races that had been brought to heel over the centuries. But Representative Yilnara from the Intelligence Division looked troubled. Her people specialized in monitoring communication patterns across the galaxy, and what they had detected from human space was unusual. "Chancellor, if I may," she began carefully. "Our monitoring stations have detected strange patterns in human communications since the New Terra incident. Their normal data traffic has decreased by 90%, but we're detecting encrypted signals on frequencies they've never used before." Admiral Zexathara waved dismissively. "Primitive species often change their communication habits when frightened. It means nothing," perhaps Yilnara replied. "But we've also detected unusual energy signatures from their home system. Deep scans suggest significant industrial activity, but our requests for inspection have been politely declined." Chancellor Vorthak considered this information. In his 1,000 years of experience, most species became either openly rebellious or completely submissive after a demonstration of dominion power. The humans' quiet acceptance combined with secretive behavior was unusual, but not necessarily threatening. Continue monitoring, he decided. But there is no cause for concern. The humans are a young species with primitive technology. Even if they are planning something, they lack the capability to challenge Dominion authority. What the Galactic Council did not know was that human civilization had been preparing for this moment since their first contact with alien life. The governments of Earth had studied every piece of information about the Dominion, and they had not liked what they learned. Dr. James Morrison sat in his laboratory deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, surrounded by holographic displays showing Dominion, biology and technology. For 3 years he had been studying samples obtained through trade and diplomatic exchanges. Now his research had a new focus. Computer, display Dominion neural structure analysis, he commanded. The hologram shifted to show the brain patterns of various Dominion species. James had been looking for weaknesses, ways to understand their psychology and predict their behavior. What he had found was both surprising and useful. Fascinating, he murmured as he studied the data. Their neural pathways show no development for rapid tactical thinking. 1,000 years of peace have made them incapable of true strategic warfare. His assistant, Dr. Sarah Park, looked up from her own workstation. James, look at this. I've been analyzing their military equipment from the inspection recordings. Their weapons are designed for intimidation, not efficiency. The power settings, used to kill Maya, were actually overkill by a factor of 10. James nodded grimly. They're used to dealing with species that surrender at the first show of force. They have no concept of what to do with an enemy that fights back with intelligence and determination. On the other side of Earth, in a facility hidden beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sarah Kim was reviewing humanity's most classified military assets. Protocol Lazarus had been developed in absolute secrecy, a contingency plan for the day when humanity might face an existential threat. Status report, she commanded as she entered the main operations center. Colonel Mitchell, her chief of staff, stepped forward with a data tablet. General, all Lazarus assets are now active. We have confirmation from 37 hidden facilities across human space. The shipyards are operational, the research teams are deployed, and our intelligence networks are gathering data. Good. What about our new recruits? Captain Vasquez has been briefed and accepted command of the new Special Operations Division. She's requested complete autonomy in selecting her team and planning operations. General Kim nodded. Elena Vasquez had been her first choice to lead the human response. The woman had witnessed Maya's death firsthand and understood exactly what they were fighting for. Grant her request. Captain Vasquez gets whatever she needs. What else? Dr. Morrison's Biological Warfare Division has identified several promising avenues of attack. The Dominion species have no immunity to Earth diseases, and their medical technology is surprisingly primitive. They've never had to deal with biological weapons. And our manufacturing capacity? Colonel Mitchell smiled grimly. That's the best news, General. It turns out that our primitive automated industries can outproduce Dominion factories by a factor of 50 to 1. They rely on slave labor and ceremonial craftsmanship. We've been building war machines while they've been making art. Meanwhile, in a small apartment on Mars Colony, Elena Vasquez was packing her few personal belongings. Her new assignment would take her far from anything resembling normal life, but she welcomed the change. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Maya, Chen's face, and heard her final words. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find David Chen, Maya's father. He looked older than he had a week ago, grief having carved new lines into his face. Captain Vasquez, he said quietly, I wanted to thank you for what you're doing. I haven't done anything yet, Elena replied. But you will. David's eyes showed a fierce determination despite his sorrow. I can't fight the way you can, but I want to help. I'm an engineer. I know Dominion technology. Use me. Elena studied the man whose daughter's death had changed everything. David, what I'm planning, it's not going to be clean or simple. It's going to be war, and war is ugly. They made it ugly when they killed my little girl for no reason, David replied. I've already lost everything that mattered to me. Now I want to make sure they lose everything that matters to them. Across the galaxy, Admiral Zex Thera was enjoying the praise of his fellow officers. The human compliance had been noted throughout Dominion space as an example of effective leadership. He had been promoted and given command of an entire sector. Congratulations, Admiral, said Fleet Commander Kelnoth as they shared drinks in the officers' club. Your handling of the human situation has been exemplary. Perhaps now other primitive species will learn from their example. Zex Thera accepted the praise with satisfaction. Humans are emotional creatures. Once they realized the consequences of defiance, they became quite reasonable. I expect no further trouble from their sector. What the Admiral did not know was that at that very moment, 3 human ships had appeared at the edge of Dominion space. They were unlike any vessels the galaxy had ever seen. Sleek, fast, and equipped with technology that should not have existed. The OW. Ships transmitted no identification signals and responded to no hails. They simply observed, recorded, and disappeared before Dominion patrols could investigate. But they left behind something that would soon become a nightmare for the aliens. Proof that humanity was no longer the primitive species they had first encountered. Dr. Morrison's research was beginning to bear fruit in ways the Dominion could never have anticipated. Human understanding of quantum mechanics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology had advanced far beyond what their initial assessments had suggested. The humans had been deliberately downplaying their capabilities during first contact, wanting to understand their new neighbors before revealing their true potential. Computer, run Simulation 17, Dr. Morrison commanded. The holographic display showed a Dominion ship being systematically disabled by microscopic machines. The nanobots invisible to Dominion sensors could infiltrate any system and either destroy it or reprogram it to human specifications. Excellent, Dr. Morrison murmured. They'll never know what hit them. In another part of the facility, weapons, designers were creating tools of war that would seem like magic to species that had grown comfortable with old technology. Gravity manipulation, matter conversion, and directed energy weapons that made Dominion armaments look like primitive clubs. But perhaps the most important development was happening in the realm of human psychology. The death of Maya Chen had done something to the human species that the Dominion could not understand. It had unified them in a way that no government or ideology ever could. On Earth, massive crowds gathered in silent vigils for the murdered child. No speeches were made. No protests organized. But in the silence, a message was being sent that resonated through every human heart. This will not stand. General Kim received daily reports from across human space. Production facilities were exceeding all expectations. Volunteer recruitment was overwhelming their capacity to process applicants. Most surprisingly, human colonies that had been arguing with each other for years were now working together with unprecedented cooperation. It's remarkable, reported Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the mission psychologist. Maya's death has created a psychological unity we've never seen before. Humans across the galaxy are identifying with her as if she were their own child. That's because she was, General Kim replied simply. Every human child belongs to all of us. The Dominion has shown us that our children are in danger, and we're responding the way any parent would. Elena Vasquez completed her briefings and prepared to depart for her first mission. She had been given command of a ship called the Retribution, crewed entirely by volunteers who had requested assignment to her unit. Many of them were parents themselves. Captain, said Lieutenant Commander Torres as they reviewed their orders. What's our primary objective? Elena looked at the tactical display showing Dominion positions throughout the sector. Our objective is simple, Commander. We're going to find every person responsible for Maya Chen's death, and we're going to make them understand the consequences of their actions. And after that, We're going to make sure no one ever thinks about hurting a human child again. The Retribution departed from its hidden base 3 days later, the first of many ships that would carry humanity's message to the galaxy. They were not seeking conquest or territory. They were seeking something far more dangerous to the established order, justice for a murdered child. As Elena's ship jumped to hyperspace, its destination was carefully chosen. They would not attack military targets or challenge Dominion fleets directly. Instead, they would go after the people who had made the decision to kill Maya Chen, starting with the supply chain that had supported Admiral Zexathara's mission. The war for Maya's memory had begun, but the galaxy would not recognize it as war for months to come. It would appear to be a series of unfortunate accidents, mysterious disappearances, and technical failures that somehow always affected those connected to the new Terra incident. By the time the Dominion understood what was happening, it would be far too late to stop it. Humanity had awakened to its true potential, and the universe was about to learn why peaceful people, when finally pushed to war, could be more terrifying than any warrior race. Maya Chen's death had been intended as a lesson in submission. Instead, it had become the opening shot in a conflict that would reshape the galaxy forever. 6 months after Maya Chen's death, the first signs of humanity's response began to appear across Dominion space. They started small, almost unnoticeable events that the vast galactic bureaucracy initially dismissed as routine accidents or minor, technical failures. Commander Yexkol was the first to disappear. He had been the communications officer aboard Admiral Zexathara's flagship during the new Terra incident, responsible for recording and transmitting the execution footage throughout Dominion space. His transport ship was found drifting near the Telemar system, completely intact but empty of crew. Strange, muttered Dominion investigator Kilnex as he examined the ship's logs. No signs of struggle, no hull breaches, no evidence of piracy. The crew simply vanished. What the investigator could not detect were the microscopic nanobots that had infiltrated the ship's air system 3 days earlier. Dr. Morrison's Biological Warfare Division had developed them specifically for silent extraction operations. The SAO crew had been rendered unconscious and transported to a hidden facility where Captain Elena Vasquez waited with her questions. Commander Yexikol, Elena said as the alien regained consciousness in a sterile white room. Thank you for joining us. The Dominion officer looked around in confusion, his yellow eyes trying to focus on his surroundings. Where am I? What is the meaning of this? You're in a place where we can have an honest conversation about your role in the murder of Maya Chen, Elena replied calmly. A human child who died because your admiral wanted to send a message about obedience. I don't know what you're talking about, Yexkol protested. I was following orders. The execution was justified under Dominion law. Elena activated a holographic display showing the footage of Maya's death, focusing on the moment when the frightened child called for her father. This is what you recorded and broadcast, Commander. An 8-year-old girl being murdered for political theater. The alien watched the recording with growing unease. The Admiral's decisions are not mine to question. I merely documented the enforcement action. And now you're going to help us document something else, Elena said, her voice remaining calm despite the anger burning in her eyes. You're going to tell us everything about Zexthara's command structure, his supporters, his supply lines, and his personal habits. I will reveal nothing to primitive terrorists, Yexkol replied defiantly. Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Commander, I think you misunderstand your situation. We're not terrorists. We're parents, and you helped kill one of our children. We have all the time in the galaxy to get the information we need. Over the following weeks, Commander Yexkol provided detailed intelligence about Dominion military operations. He did so not because of torture or threats, but because Elena's team had something far more effective. They made him watch recordings of human children playing, laughing, and learning. They showed him Maya's entire life, from her first steps to her final moments. She had dreams, Elena told him during one session. She wanted to be an engineer like her father. She loved animals and always shared her food with the colony's pets. She was learning to read alien languages because she thought it would help humans and aliens understand each other better. By the end of his captivity, Yexkol was broken not by pain, but by the weight of understanding what had been destroyed. When they released him on a remote world with enough supplies to survive, he carried with him something that would haunt the Dominion, the knowledge that humans remembered everything and would never forget. The second target was Supply Depot Gamma 7, which had provided the weapons and equipment for Admiral Zexthara's fleet. The facility's automated systems began experiencing mysterious malfunctions that defied all attempts at repair. Shipments were delivered to wrong destinations, weapon systems shut down randomly, and worst of all, the depot's main computer began displaying images of Maya Chen on every screen. Chief Engineer Veltara stared at the displays in frustration. "I don't understand it. Our security systems show no signs of intrusion, but the computers are completely compromised." What she could not see were the quantum infiltration protocols developed by human AI specialists. The systems were not being hacked in any conventional sense. They were being rewritten at the quantum level by machines that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Sir," reported one of her technicians, "the anomalies are spreading to other facilities in the network. 17 depots are now reporting similar problems." The truth was that humanity had been studying Dominion technology since first contact, and they had discovered something remarkable. The alien systems were incredibly sophisticated but also incredibly predictable. 1,000 years of peace had made them complacent about security. Meanwhile, Elena Vasquez and her team, now calling themselves Maya's Wolves, moved through Dominion space like ghosts. Their ship, the Retribution, was equipped with cloaking, technology that bent light and sensor waves around it, making it effectively invisible to alien detection systems. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres as they approached their next objective. Transport vessel carrying sector, Administrator Belkoth. Belkoth had been responsible for approving the compliance enforcement mission to New Terra. His signature was on the orders that had led to Maya's death, though he had probably never bothered to read the details of what he was authorizing. "Begin approach," Elena commanded. "Remember, we want him alive and conscious. He has information we need, and he's going to answer for what he authorized." The transport ship never knew what hit it. One moment it was traveling through hyperspace, and the next it was caught in a gravity well that pulled it back into normal space. Dominion sensors detected no attacking ships, no weapons fire, no evidence of hostile action. The transport simply stopped, its engines failing in ways that seemed impossible. Administrator Belkoth found himself face to face with Elena Vasquez in his own cabin, having no memory of how she had gotten there. His security guards were unconscious. His ship was dead in space, and this human female was sitting calmly in his chair as if she owned the place. "Administrator," Elena said politely, "we need to discuss your paperwork." Over the next several hours, Belkoth learned more about human determination than any Dominion citizen had ever experienced. Elena did not threaten him or cause him physical harm. Instead, she educated him about the consequences of his decisions. "This is Maya Chen," she said, showing him holographic recordings of the child's life. "She was 8 years old when your authorization killed her. She loved to sing, and she was teaching herself to play a musical instrument called a piano. I signed thousands of authorizations." Belkoth protested weakly. "I cannot be expected to review every minor enforcement action. Minor." Elena's voice remained calm, but something in her eyes made the alien administrator shrink back in his chair. "The murder of a child is minor to you?" "It was a necessary demonstration of Dominion authority," he replied. Though his voice lacked conviction, Elena activated another recording, this one showing Maya's father collapsing in grief beside his daughter's body. "Watch this, Administrator. Watch a father realize his child is dead because you couldn't be bothered to read what you were signing." By the time Elena was finished with him, Administrator Belkoth had provided complete details about Dominion administrative procedures, security protocols, and chain of command structures. More importantly, he had been forced to confront the reality of what his bureaucratic indifference had caused. When they released him, Belkoth was a changed being. He immediately submitted his resignation and retired to a monastery world, unable to function in a system he now understood was built on casual cruelty. But Maya's wolves were just the beginning. Across human space, other teams were forming with similar objectives. Dr. Morrison's biological warfare specialist created viruses that targeted only Dominion species, not to kill them, but to make them experience the same helplessness Maya had felt in her final moments. The diseases caused temporary paralysis and overwhelming fear, symptoms that lasted exactly as long as Maya's execution had taken. Human manufacturing facilities, now operating at full capacity, began producing weapons and equipment that seemed to violate known laws of physics. Matter converters that could turn asteroids into warships, gravity manipulators that could crush entire fleets, and most terrifying of all, weapons that attacked the mind rather than the body. General Sarah Kim received daily reports from across the growing conflict zone. "Status report," she commanded as she entered the situation room. "Excellent progress across all fronts," reported Colonel Mitchell. 17 key Dominion facilities have been neutralized without a single shot fired. Their supply chains are in chaos, their communication networks are compromised, and their leadership is beginning to experience what our analysts are calling psychological warfare fatigue. Casualties? None on our side. Minimal on theirs, mostly wounded pride and damaged equipment. Captain Vasquez's protocols are working perfectly. We're destroying their ability to function without giving them anything concrete to retaliate against. General, Kim nodded approvingly. And their response? Confusion, mostly. They're trying to classify these incidents as technical failures or isolated criminal activity. They don't understand that they're fighting a war. What the Dominion truly could not comprehend was the nature of human warfare. They were used to conflicts that followed established patterns. Fleets met in space, armies clashed on planets, treaties were signed by the survivors. Human warfare was something entirely different. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the mission psychologist, had been studying Dominion psychology and had made a crucial discovery. General, their species have never developed the capacity for what we call asymmetric thinking. They literally cannot conceive of an enemy that doesn't follow their rules of engagement. Explain, General Kim requested. For 1,000 years, they've been the dominant force in the galaxy. Every conflict has been resolved through overwhelming display of power. They show up with a big fleet, the enemy surrenders, and peace is restored. They have no concept of an opponent who refuses to play by those rules. Meanwhile, Admiral Zexathara was beginning to experience the first hints that something was wrong. His staff was reporting unusual incidents throughout his sector, but nothing that seemed immediately threatening. "Admiral," reported his new communications. "Officer, we've lost contact with Supply Depot Gamma 7 and 3 administrative centers in the past week. Technical problems," Zexathara dismissed. "Primitive species often cause disruptions when they're learning to integrate with Dominion systems." "Perhaps, sir, but the disruptions seem to be spreading. Intelligence suggests possible coordinated action." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting the humans are somehow responsible? They lack the capability for such operations." What Zexathara did not know was that at that very moment, Elena Vasquez was reviewing intelligence gathered from their recent operations. The picture it painted was deeply satisfying. The Dominion was beginning to fracture under pressure they could not understand or counter. "Torres," she called to her second-in-command, "what's our next target?" "Admiral Zexathara's personal supply. Ship is scheduled to dock at Station Keylor in 3 days. Perfect opportunity to send him a more direct message." Elena smiled, and for the first time in months there was genuine pleasure in the expression. "Excellent. It's time the Admiral learned that actions have consequences." The hunt was accelerating, and the Dominion was beginning to understand that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Humanity was not seeking conquest or territory. They were seeking justice for a murdered child, and they would not stop until every person responsible had paid the price. Maya Chen's death had been intended to teach humanity about submission. Instead, it was teaching the galaxy about the terrible patience of human vengeance. Admiral Zexathara stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display with growing unease. In the past month, his entire sector had been plagued by what could only be described as systematic failures. Supply lines disrupted, communication networks compromised, and key personnel simply vanishing without explanation. Admiral, his aide approached nervously. We've received another report. Your personal courier ship never arrived at Station Keylor. It was found drifting, empty near the asteroid field. The Admiral's jaw tightened. This was the 15th ship in his command to suffer mysterious crew disappearances. Each incident left behind only empty vessels and cargo holds filled with images of a human child. The same child he had executed on New Terra months ago. Sir, continued the aide, High Command is requesting a full explanation of the incidents in your sector. They're beginning to suspect coordinated action. Zexathara turned away from the display, his yellow eyes reflecting, a mixture of anger and something that might have been fear. Impossible. The humans lack the technology for such operations. These incidents must be the work of another species. But even as he spoke the words, the Admiral knew they rang false. Every attack, every disruption, every missing crew member was connected to someone who had been present during the New Terra operation. Someone was hunting his people with surgical precision, and they were doing it without leaving any evidence behind. What Zexathara could not know was that at that very moment, Elena Vasquez and her team were observing his flagship from less than a kilometer away. The Retribution hung invisible in space, its advanced cloaking systems making it undetectable to Dominion sensors. Target confirmed, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres. Admiral Zexathara is aboard the command vessel, along with his senior staff. Elena studied the tactical readout with satisfaction. After months of careful preparation, they had finally cornered the being responsible for Maya's death. But this would not be another quick extraction. This time, they were going to send a message that the entire galaxy would understand. Begin. Phase 1, she commanded. I want every system on that ship compromised, but keep them functional. The Admiral is going to watch his empire crumble before we take him. Dr. Morrison's quantum infiltration systems went to work with devastating efficiency. Within minutes, every computer aboard Zexathara's flagship was under human control, though the aliens noticed nothing unusual. Screens continued to display normal information, but now everything was being filtered through human intelligence networks. Earth, General Sarah Kim watched the operation unfold from her command center. The war had escalated far beyond anything the Dominion could comprehend, and humanity was winning without firing a single conventional shot. Status report across all fronts, she commanded. Colonel Mitchell stepped forward with his daily briefing. General, our psychological warfare operations have exceeded all projections. Dominion morale is collapsing in 17 sectors. Their communication networks are compromised to the point where they're afraid to send sensitive information through their own systems. Casualties? Still minimal on both sides. The Dominion has lost approximately 50,000 personnel to extraction operations, but all are alive and being held in our facilities. Our own losses remain zero. General Kim nodded grimly. And their response? That's where things get interesting. High Chancellor Vorthak has called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Intelligence suggests they're planning a direct military response. This was what humanity had been waiting for. The Dominion was finally beginning to understand that they were under attack, but their response would follow the same predictable patterns they had used for 1,000 years. They would gather their fleets and attempt to crush the threat with overwhelming force. Activate Phase 2 protocols, General Kim ordered. All ships to defensive positions around Earth. It's time to show them what they're really fighting. Meanwhile, aboard his flagship, Admiral Zexathara was receiving the news he had been dreading. High Command had finally connected the incidents in his sector to the New Terra operation, and they were not pleased with his explanations. Admiral, his communications officer reported, you're being recalled to Centralis Prime for immediate debriefing. Fleet Commander Kelnoth will be arriving with reinforcements to handle the situation in your sector. Zexathara felt his career crumbling around him. The human problem was destroying everything he had built, and he still had no idea how they were doing it. Very well. Prepare for departure to the capital. What he did not realize was that Elena Vasquez had been listening to every communication, reading every order and watching every decision he made. The humans had turned his own ship into a window through which they could observe Dominion military operations in real time. Torres, Elena called to her second-in-command. Begin Phase 2. I want a full tactical analysis of their fleet movements. Transmitted to General Kim. Already in progress, Captain. We're tracking 17 Dominion fleets converging on Earth. Estimated arrival in 48 hours. Elena smiled coldly. Excellent. They're finally taking the bait. The Dominion's response was everything humanity had hoped for. High Chancellor Vorthak had decided that the mysterious incidents affecting Admiral Zexathera's sector were evidence of a coordinated human rebellion that needed to be crushed immediately and decisively. Gather every available fleet, he commanded the Galactic Council. The humans must be reminded of their place in the galactic order. We will destroy their homeworld as an example to other primitive species. The assembled council members murmured their approval. This was familiar territory, the kind of problem that had always been solved through overwhelming displays of force. None of them questioned whether humanity might have prepared for exactly this response. Fleet Commander Kelnath was given overall command of the operation. His armada consisted of over 3,000 ships representing the combined military might of dozens of alien species. It was the largest fleet assembled in 500 years, and it was aimed directly at humanity's heart. This will be simple, Kelnath told his staff as they prepared for departure. The humans have shown some cleverness with sabotage and terrorism, but they cannot stand against the full might of the Dominion. We will destroy their fleet, occupy their worlds, and execute their leadership as an example. Dr. Morrison watched the approaching armada from his monitoring station and couldn't help but smile. Computer, activate all defensive systems. It's time to give our guests a proper welcome. Across human space, hidden installations that had been built in secret over the past year began powering up. The moon itself revealed its true nature as massive weapon arrays emerged from beneath the surface. Asteroid fields that had seemed empty suddenly bristled with defensive platforms. And throughout the solar system, devices that violated every known law of physics prepared to demonstrate humanity's true technological capabilities. General, reported Dr. Morrison over the communication link, all systems are operational. The Dominion fleet will reach the outer system perimeter in 6 hours. Understood, General Kim replied. Captain Vasquez, what's the status of your operation? Elena's voice came through clearly from the Retribution. Admiral Zexathera is aboard his flagship approaching Earth with the main fleet. We're maintaining surveillance and ready to begin extraction when you give the order. Negative, Captain. I want him to see what happens when someone threatens human children. Let him watch his entire fleet get destroyed, then bring him to me. As the massive Dominion armada approached Earth, they found something that defied all their expectations. The human homeworld appeared to be completely undefended. No orbital platforms, no fleet formations, no sign of military preparation. Earth, hung in space like a blue and green jewel, seemingly helpless before their overwhelming force. This is too easy, muttered Fleet Commander Kelnath as he studied the tactical displays. Where are their defenses? Perhaps they realize the futility of resistance, suggested his aide. Many primitive species surrender when faced with superior force. But Admiral Zexathera, monitoring the approach from his position in the fleet, felt a growing sense of unease. The humans had demonstrated remarkable capabilities over the past months. It seemed unlikely that they would leave their homeworld, completely vulnerable. Something is wrong, he told his communications officer. The humans are planning something. As if in response to his words, space around Earth suddenly came alive. What had appeared to be empty vacuum was revealed to be filled with cloaked installations, hidden weapon platforms, and defensive systems that had been invisible to Dominion sensors. The moon opened like a flower, revealing a massive construction that spanned its entire surface. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the Dominion had ever encountered as humanity's most carefully guarded secret, prepared to demonstrate its power. By the void, whispered Fleet Commander Kelnath as his sensors finally detected the true scope of human preparations. How is this possible? The answer came in the form of a transmission broadcast across all frequencies, delivered in Admiral Zexathera's own voice, though he had never spoken the words. Attention, Dominion Fleet. You have come to Earth seeking to punish humanity for defending ourselves against the murder of our children. We welcome you to our home system. Population, 12 billion very angry humans. The transmission continued with footage of Maya Chen's execution, played in slow motion so that every detail was clearly visible. Her final words, "I want to go home," echoed across the Dominion fleet in dozens of alien languages. You killed this child to send us a message about submission. The broadcast continued. We received your message. Here is our reply. What followed was a demonstration of power that redefined the Dominion's understanding of what was possible. Weapons that manipulated gravity itself reached out across millions of kilometers to crush ships like insects. Energy beams that bent space and time, reduced entire formations to atomic particles. And worst of all, weapons that attacked the mind itself, filling enemy crew members with the same terror Maya had experienced in her final moments. Admiral Zexathara watched his civilization's greatest fleet dissolve around him like smoke in a hurricane. Ships that had been the pride of their respective species simply ceased to exist, their crews vanishing into quantum foam or collapsing into impossibly small points of matter. Retreat, screamed Fleet Commander Kelnoth over the communication channels. All ships retreat immediately, but there was nowhere to run. Human weapons reached across the solar system with casual ease, plucking fleeing ships from hyperspace and reducing them to scrap metal. In less than an hour, the greatest military force in galactic history had been completely annihilated. Through it all, Admiral Zexathera's flagship remained untouched, protected by the same humans who were destroying everything around him. He was being kept alive to witness the consequences of his actions, to understand the full scope of what he had unleashed when he decided to murder a child for political theater. As the last Dominion ships disappeared in bursts of exotic energy, Elena Vasquez finally made her move. The retribution materialized beside Zexathara's flagship, no longer bothering with stealth protocols. "Admiral," she transmitted directly to his command bridge, "this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Retribution. You killed Maya Chen. Now you're coming with me to answer for that crime." Zexathara looked around at what remained of his fleet, nothing but debris and radiation, and finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. He had not just killed a child. He had awakened a species that could reshape reality itself, when properly motivated. "Surrender your vessel," Elena continued, "or watch it join the rest of your fleet in oblivion." The Admiral looked at his crew, all of whom were staring at him with expressions of terror and accusation. They had followed him into this disaster, and now they were going to pay the price for his arrogance. "We surrender," he said quietly. As Elena's team boarded his ship, Admiral Zexathara realized that the war was far from over. This had been just the opening engagement. Humanity had revealed only a fraction of their true capabilities, and they had done so for one simple reason: to send a message to the galaxy about what happened when someone hurt their children. Maya Chen's death had cost the Dominion their greatest fleet and their illusion of invincibility. But Elena Vasquez was not finished with them yet. The real reckoning was still to come. The trial of Admiral Zexathara took place on Earth, broadcast live to every inhabited world in the galaxy. The courtroom was simple and austere, designed not for spectacle but for justice. Elena Vasquez sat in the front row, her eyes never leaving the alien who had destroyed so much with a single thoughtless act. The Admiral looked older than he had 9 months ago when he killed Maya Chen. His gray skin had taken on a sickly pallor, and his yellow eyes showed the haunted expression of someone who had seen his entire worldview collapse. He was no longer the confident enforcer of galactic order, but a broken being who finally understood the true cost of his actions. Judge Maria Santos, a former military officer turned civilian magistrate, called the court to order. "Admiral Zexathara, you stand accused of the murder of Maya Chen, an innocent child, for the purpose of political intimidation. How do you plead?" The Admiral's translator rendered his words in mechanical tones that somehow made them more damning. "Guilty." I plead guilty to all charges. There was no drama in the admission, no last-minute defenses or attempts to justify his actions. The months since Maya's death had stripped away all his rationalizations, leaving only the bare truth of what he had done. The court will hear victim impact statements, Judge Santos announced. David Chen stepped forward, and the galaxy watched a father speak about his murdered daughter. He talked about her dreams, her kindness, her curiosity about the universe that had ultimately killed her. He spoke simply and quietly, but his words carried across space with the force of absolute truth. Maya believed the universe was good, he said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. She thought aliens and humans could be friends. She was learning their languages because she wanted to help everyone understand each other, and they killed her for that hope. When David finished, Elena Vasquez took the stand, but she did not speak about vengeance or justice. Instead, she talked about consequences. Your Honor, the defendant's actions have changed humanity forever. We have learned that the universe contains beings who will murder children for political convenience. We have learned that peaceful coexistence requires the ability to defend ourselves against those who mistake kindness for weakness. She turned to look directly at Admiral Zex Thera. The defendant taught us that we cannot rely on the goodwill of others to protect our children. For that lesson, he will answer not just to this court, but to history itself. The sentence was life imprisonment, to be served in a facility where the Admiral would spend his remaining years watching recordings of human children at play, learning about the lives that were similar to the one he had destroyed. It was not intended as torture but as education, a final chance for him to understand what he had taken from the universe. But the trial was not the end of humanity's response. It was barely the beginning. High Chancellor Vorthak sat in the ruins of the Galactic Council chamber on Centralis Prime, staring at reports that made no sense. In the week since the destruction of the Dominion fleet at Earth, human ships had appeared throughout the galaxy. They did not attack or conquer, but they made their presence known in ways that could not be ignored. Chancellor, his aide reported, nervously, we have confirmed human vessels in 37 systems. They're not responding to our communications, but they're also not showing any hostile intent. What are they doing? Vorthak asked wearily. They appear to be observing, monitoring our activities. Sometimes they respond to distress calls and provide aid, but they refuse all attempts at diplomatic contact. The truth was more complex than the Dominion could understand. Humanity had positioned itself as the galaxy's new watchdog, ready to intervene whenever someone threatened the innocent. They were not seeking to rule, but to prevent others from ruling through terror and violence. General Sarah Kim reviewed the deployment reports from her office on Earth. Operation Guardian was proceeding exactly as planned. Human forces were now positioned to monitor every major power in the galaxy, ready to respond instantly to any threat against civilian populations. Status report, she commanded as Colonel Mitchell entered with his daily briefing. All monitoring stations are operational, General. We're tracking communications from 43 different species, with full surveillance coverage of former Dominion territories. Dr. Morrison's intelligence networks are providing real-time assessment of potential threats. Any immediate concerns? The Veltar Empire has been mobilizing forces near the Rigel sector. Intelligence suggests they may be planning to expand into former Dominion space. However, our presence in the area appears to be deterring any aggressive action. General Kim nodded approvingly. Good. What about reconstruction efforts? Proceeding ahead of schedule. We've provided aid to 17 worlds that were previously under Dominion control. Food, medical supplies, and technical assistance. In each case, we've made it clear that the aid comes with no strings attached. We're not seeking to replace the Dominion as their rulers. This was perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of humanity's new role in the galaxy. They offered help, without demanding submission, protection without requiring tribute. It was a concept so foreign to galactic politics that many species initially refused to believe it was genuine. Elena Vasquez now commanded a fleet of ships that bore a simple designation, Maya's Guard. Their mission was straightforward: respond. to any threat against innocent life, anywhere in the galaxy, with whatever force was necessary to stop it. Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Torres as they approached the Kethlar system. We're receiving a distress signal from the fourth planet. Appears to be a civil conflict with civilian casualties. Elena studied the tactical display showing the planet below. Two factions were fighting for control of the world's government, and neither side was showing much concern for the safety of non-combatants caught in the crossfire. Standard intervention protocol, she ordered. Disable all military assets, establish safe zones for civilians, and broadcast the Maya Doctrine to all participants. The Maya Doctrine had become humanity's statement of principles to the galaxy. It was simple and direct. Any group that deliberately targeted innocents, especially children, would face immediate intervention by human forces. No negotiations, no warnings, no diplomatic immunity. The warring factions on Kethlar learned this lesson within minutes of Elena's arrival. Their weapon systems simply stopped working. Their communications were taken over by human broadcasts, and their military leaders found themselves transported to neutral locations where they could be lectured about the consequences of involving civilians in their conflicts. Attention all combatants, Elena's voice echoed across the planet's surface. This is Captain Vasquez of Maya's Guard. You have 30 minutes to establish a ceasefire and begin negotiations for the protection of civilian populations. Failure to comply will result in the removal of your military capabilities and leadership. The response was swift and complete. Within the hour, both sides had agreed to peace talks mediated by neutral parties, with human observers ensuring that no civilians were harmed during the process. Dr. James Morrison watched the intervention from his laboratory, satisfied that another potential tragedy had been prevented. His research had expanded beyond weapons development to include reconstruction and healing technologies. Humanity was learning to repair the damage caused by galactic politics, one world at a time. Computer, display the current threat assessment matrix, he commanded. The holographic display showed the galaxy as it now existed, a complex web of relationships monitored and protected by human intelligence networks. Red zones indicated areas of potential conflict, yellow zones showed regions requiring observation, and green zones represented stable areas where life could flourish without fear. Remarkable, Dr. Morrison murmured. In less than a year, we've gone from unknown newcomers to the galaxy's primary peacekeeping force. But the true measure of humanity's success was not in their military victories or technological superiority. It was in the slow change taking place in galactic culture itself. Species that had ruled through fear for millennia were beginning to understand that there was another way. Ambassador Klixtal of the former mining guild approached the human embassy on Centralis Prime with considerable nervousness. His species had been among the Dominion's most enthusiastic supporters, and they were still adjusting to the new reality. Ambassador Chen, he said formally to the human representative, my government wishes to discuss the establishment of formal diplomatic relations. Ambassador Sarah Chen, David Chen's sister and Maya's aunt, received him with polite formality. She had volunteered for the diplomatic corps as her way of honoring her niece's memory. Ambassador Klixtal, we appreciate your government's interest. However, as you know, humanity does not seek traditional alliances or trade agreements. We have only one requirement for peaceful relations, the protection of innocence. Klixtal replied quickly. Yes, we understand the Maya Doctrine. My government has implemented new policies to ensure compliance with human expectations. We're pleased to hear that, Sarah replied. But you should understand that our monitoring will continue regardless of any formal agreements. The safety of children and non-combatants is not negotiable. This conversation was being repeated across the galaxy as species after species came to understand the new reality. Humanity would not conquer them or rule them, but they would no longer tolerate the casual cruelty that had characterized galactic politics for centuries. On New Terra, a small memorial garden had grown around Maya Chen's grave. Visitors came from across human space and beyond, leaving flowers and toys and messages of remembrance. The colony had become a pilgrimage site, a place where people came to remember what had been lost and what had been gained. Elena Vasquez visited the memorial whenever her duties brought her back to human space. She stood before the small gravestone and spoke softly to the child whose death had changed everything. Maya, we kept our promise. No one will ever forget what happened to you, and no one will ever hurt another child the way they hurt you. The galaxy is different now because of you. The inscription on the gravestone had been expanded since the war. It now read, Maya Chen, beloved daughter, she believed the universe was good. Because of her, it became better. Admiral Zexithara, in his prison cell, watched recordings of human children playing in the memorial garden. His guards had told him that these children came from dozens of different worlds, representing species that had once been enemies. They played together without fear, protected by the promise that humanity had made in Maya's name. For the first time since his capture, the admiral spoke without being questioned. I understand now, he said quietly. I understand what I destroyed, and what you built from its ashes. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in human nature, that peaceful people, when finally driven to war, fight not for conquest, but for the simple right to live without fear. Maya Chen's death had cost the universe one bright young life, but it had purchased something invaluable in return, the knowledge that innocence would always have protectors. Humanity had not sought to rule the galaxy. They had chosen something far more difficult and far more important. They had chosen to be its conscience, its guardians, and its hope for a better future. The war for Maya's memory was over. The peace built in her honor had begun. And somewhere in the quantum networks that connected human space, in the algorithms that monitored galactic communications, in the hearts and minds of 12 billion humans, Maya Chen's laughter echoed on, a reminder that even in the darkest universe, some lights can never be extinguished. The galaxy was vast and often cruel, but it was no longer a place where children died for the convenience of tyrants. In that simple fact lay humanity's greatest victory, and Maya's most lasting memorial.